So part of the responsibility of the Board of Regents here and our church body, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, is to work together to pick the next president, which we are right in the middle of doing. The process, just so that you know, I'm not going to get into all the gory details because it would take the rest of the day to talk about the gory details, but the process is quite lengthy. There is bylaws of our church body that we have to follow carefully, and we had been adhering to that. But as you all know, sitting in the room here, this whole higher education is a very complex and rapidly changing, and it's fiercely competitive. Would you all agree? Yeah, we know that. So identifying, the best leader for CSP is a pretty important responsibility, and it's one that I will tell you that we don't take lightly. We really want to be as diligent in choosing the right person for this position, and we will. There is a set of criteria that we're using very carefully. The board has been assessing. The criteria, interestingly enough, came out of discussions with the Board of Regents, with our church body, and with many of you. And some of you may recall that we had a survey that was put out last fall with regards to needs and what your thoughts were in terms of the next leader of this organization, and many of you provided some incredible feedback, and by the way, that has been used as part of our search process and criteria. So I did want to thank you for that. So in addition to that, because it's kind of a big, long, lengthy process, we needed to form a search committee. And the search committee is designed to help the board identify candidates that are best suited for consideration by the board and by our Lutheran Church Missouri Synod using this set of criteria that I was talking about. And the search committee is a smaller committee, but it does consist of representatives of the Board of Regents here in Minnesota, and it also includes faculty and staff. So it's a nice balanced search committee, but I want to tell you that search committee, starting in October to today, has put in a massive amount of time and effort in this process. And again, I'm not going to get into all the gory details, but really a lot of time and effort. And I want to thank all of them, in particular the chair of the committee, who's Jim Gertz. And Jim is sitting right here. Can you raise your hand so everybody can see you? Jim requires a round of applause real quick. Yeah, thanks. So there's been a lot of meetings, there's been a lot of calls, we've been reviewing documents, and there's been a lot of prayer from a lot of people, and we really appreciate that. So, and through this review of all these vitaes that we received, and resumes, and letter of interest, and formal interviews, and in some cases we've done some business and psychological evaluations to help us bring us where we are today. And so, in our thought, one of the important elements of this evaluation is to have key individuals come to campus for a few days so that these folks can meet with various stakeholders on campus. The idea there is it's a great opportunity for open dialogue, open communication, and open discussion with all parties, which is exactly what this process is starting with today. So this morning, I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Thomas, who is currently in a senior leadership role with Concordia of Portland. And so for this open session, Dr. Thomas has prepared some comments, a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to let him do that in a minute. And then after that, we'll have a short time for any questions that you might have prior to leaving and doing some more commitments on campus. So if you do have some questions, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to ask those of Dr. Thomas. So let's give a warm CSP and Minnesota welcome to Dr. Michael Thomas.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. This has just been fantastic. This Minnesota Nice thing is really real. But I'm assuming the crowd's pretty big today because of the weather, so I'm okay with that. So I've been asked to make a few comments today about give a brief introduction about myself, who I am, how I was formed, where I was educated. In addition to that, I'll tell you a little bit about my professional experiences, and then I'll pivot into a couple questions about the challenges facing higher ed, but also the opportunities for that. And then I was asked to pivot to laying out my mission and vision for CSP. But I've decided to get rid of the word my, and I put in the presentation the word our, because as a leader, right, I'll tell you a little bit about my leadership philosophy, and that is I'm a servant leader. I see leadership as an inverted pyramid. And if I were called to serve as president here, the board, myself, the administration would be serving the students, the faculty and staff primarily to support the students and their families. I really see leadership in that way. So the our makes a lot more sense to who I am. So I hope in this presentation you'll get a sense of kind of how I think, my leadership philosophy, some of the emphases that I would have as president here. But the other thing is to lay out some broad brushstrokes, just kind of about where we would be going. But those are broad, and they're not extremely detailed, although over the next day and a half, I hope to fill them out more for you, and in the question and answer session as well. But the idea, right, is to give you broad brushstrokes, because I don't know enough yet, right? This is why this visit's so important to both me and you. You get to know a little bit about me. I get to know a little bit about all of you. And then, right, together we can fill out the details. But let's pivot first to this balance, right? Is this balance right? Broad brushstrokes versus detail? I think. We'll see. Question and answer session will give you a chance to ask more detailed questions. Personal introduction, education formation, professional experience, and then, of course, question and answers at the end. But let me start with my family. They clearly are not here today, but I wanted to let you get to know them just briefly. On the left is my wife, Kimberly. She goes by Kim. Next year, we celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary, and my friends at Portland think they should have a party and give my wife a medal, and I'm not even allowed to be in the room. So that's probably about right. The rock of my life, right, the foundation, the person that helped me has helped me be successful. In the center is our son, Darian. He is a sophomore at Seattle University, international studies major, Japanese minor. But his claim to fame is he gets up at 4 a.m. every day to go row a crew boat in the Sound. So he's a crewer, and as a sophomore, a varsity crewer. So we're very, very happy about this. On the right is my teenage daughter, Delaney. I was not allowed to use this picture. But I was not allowed to use any picture. If you have teenagers' daughters, you know how this works. So I picked this one mainly because it's so much her. You know, aviators, kind of snark. So anyway, that's Delaney. She will kill me if she ever sees this. Okay, a little bit about myself. So I grew up in northwest Montana in a small logging town called Columbia Falls outside of Glacier National Park. I grew up in a blue-collar family. I'm first-generation college student. And why? And in fact, I said in my cover letter for the application, this may be my most important qualification, my most important experience, because to be a first-generation college student, it gives me a focus or a way of thinking about college that's unique, right? Because so many of the students, even at CSP, and I know it's at Portland, are first-gen. And we have to really pivot to thinking about how are we recruiting first-generation students and their families. Because with the cost of higher ed, it's no longer the student's choice on their own, usually. For me, I just went to Portland. My parents didn't even go with me. I just drove myself there. Because my parents, right, they're blue-collar workers. They didn't know. They couldn't provide any help. But so many of us, I'm sure in here, are also first-gen. So I think that's a really important qualification for myself in this possible role. My siblings and my parents still live in Montana. My brother's an LCMS pastor, and my sister's an elementary school teacher. It was never not an option to go to college in my family. My parents just said, you're going to college. And we didn't even argue with them. We argued with them all the time about other stuff, but not that. And all of us hold advanced degrees to this day. My education and formation, I've already mentioned that it was mentioned that I'm a professor and dean at Concordia Portland. This is also my alma mater. I went to Concordia Portland. I thought I was being called to the pastoral ministry, so I went out to train in that way. I was a pre-seminary major when I first got to Portland, but my skills, my academic skills in Greek, Latin, Hebrew, really kind of grew, and I felt somewhat called maybe to the teaching ministry. Between my junior and senior year, I had the chance to go work in the mission fields of Panama with the LCMS. I worked in some rural churches for about 3 months, and so I felt my heart called to missions. I came back to Portland. I spent part of my fourth year, I stayed an extra half a semester, a quarter, to work on Japanese with the former dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. He'd been a missionary to Japan with the Lutheran Church for about 15 years or so. So I worked on Japanese, but if you know Japanese, don't quiz me. My Japanese is horrible now. It was pretty good then, but So I went to teach at Concordia Tokyo. And so I taught at Concordia Tokyo, which was a branch campus of Portland at the time. And I also worked with the Lutheran Church of Japan. And I really thought I was being called to the mission field in Japan. But God closes doors and opens doors. So I ended up at the University of Washington. And I studied international affairs and comparative religions. And from there, I did the springboard into the National Championship University. I wanted to point that out today, to the University of Virginia. I know. So I went to UVA, studied religious studies there, and focused on the history and literature of early Christianity, early Judaism, and classics, and the attendant languages that went with those. In 2003, I was called to Portland to serve as a faculty member. But while I was there, I've designed and taught 23 different classes. I taught Greek and Latin. Yes, I'm that guy. Who's that guy in here? The Greek and Latin professor? Oh, he's not here today. Okay. He's teaching. Okay, good. Good, he's teaching. The board members, I'm sure, are very happy, and the administrators are happy about that. So I taught Greek and Latin, history, humanities. I taught a lot of stuff. My love, though, is to teach freshmen. And I still, as a dean, I'm a teaching dean. So I teach freshmen. I love teaching gen eds. But over the time, some of my administrative skills came to the fore, and so I have served on pretty much every committee at the university. I have run almost every committee at the university, including creating the honor code, creating the faculty senate, and then other people noticed my administrative skills, so I was appointed to be the director of the honors program. Honors at Portland is like a mini college. As the director, I served really as a dean. It didn't have the title dean, but the functions were all dean functions. And so interfacing with admissions and marketing, actually going with admissions and admissions out to schools, to recruitment fairs, meeting with students and faculty or families when they came to campus, recruiting faculty to teach, working on curriculum, working with the registrar for probation and dismissals, right? So really all the functions of a dean. And then because of that, when the Dean of Arts and Sciences retired, I was appointed to that position as the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. So CSP's mission. You know the mission. I'm not going to read it to you, but this mission statement is amazing, in my opinion. If I were on faculty here and I was put on the task force to create the mission statement, or to help create the mission statement, this is the one we would come up with. I think it's so solid. So I'm supposed to kind of give my mission today. Well, I'm not going to give a revised mission because I love this one, okay? So we'll talk a little more about details in a minute. But the bottom is what I really want to focus on today. Around your campus, you have this on the banner, responsive, relevant, and real. And I thought at first this was kind of marketing slogan, right? It sounds like a marketing slogan. But the more I studied CSP, right? The more I studied CSP, the more I dug into your website, read all the materials that were provided. This is really who you are, right? Very much responsive, relevant, and real. So what have you guys done from an outsider's perspective, right? As a community, you have built a robust curricular and co-curricular program. And instead of turning around, I'll try to do this. Never mind. Long ago, too many books. Yeah. You've built a beautiful campus. This campus, I just did a tour. This campus is amazing, right? I got to sneak on campus about 3 weeks ago during spring break when you had the really nice weather. Yeah, it was very nice. Snow, it was really, really great. So your facilities are amazing. You've also built an online campus throughout the world. In fact, I'll pause here for a second. The gym I go to in the morning, there's an acquaintance there, and she's a lady with 4 children. And she was asking me why I wasn't going to be in the gym this week. And so I said to her, well, I'm going to go to St. Paul, Minnesota. She says, I go to school in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm like, okay, where? And she said, Concordia. And I'm like, you're a student at Concordia? Yeah, I'm an online student at Concordia, St. Paul. I did not tell Concordia, Portland that, all right? But I just, that was just serendipitous, right? In addition, right, one of the things that, I don't know, I'm sure you know this, but from an outsider's perspective, your financial situation is enviable, right? Concordia St. Paul is the envy of the Concordia system, right? I'll say more about that in a minute. You proudly proclaim a Lutheran confession of faith, and you welcome all students to CSP. And you do those two in tandem in a winsome way, in a hospitable way. Okay. Let's focus a little bit on this responsiveness. So in 2013, you did this tuition reset. This is bold, right? It's based in the best tradition of Lutheran higher ed, stepping out and trusting God, but it's a bold move. But it was a responsive move, a very important move, because higher ed, as you know, is undergoing a lot of challenges, especially after 2008. It accelerated. Challenges, though, come with opportunities. And I think you guys have really embraced this. This tuition reset, it answers the question that parents have. How are we going to afford school? How are we possibly going to do this? And it's honest, right? It's a sticker price that's more reflective of what's real. So important. A boldness to step out of faith, but trusting in God that He'll provide. But this was not a risky step out, although it probably had its risks. But it was tempered by years of planning. The administration planned for this for over 3 years to be able to pull the trigger on this. That is super impressive to me. And because of this, you now have a controlled and sustainable financial situation. And these are all aspects of this responsive, relevant, and real. So a little more on the current issues facing higher ed. So we're in a new normal. I think most of you know this now. This idea of tuition rising forever, it's done, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit here or there, but I think we are in a new reality. But CSP is in a very good place for this new reality because several years ago, you already took that on. Other schools are really struggling with that right now, how to deal with this. In addition, just a few stats. Between 2001 and 2015, the average cost of private higher education went up 50%. In the same time, the median household income in the United States dropped, adjusted for inflation. Same thing happened at state schools, about a 50% increase. But I'm here to tell you, and I hope you know this, the sky's not falling. I know the Chronicle of Higher Education is constantly talking about schools failing, and this is going to happen, right? There is some adjustments coming. But I think Concordia St. Paul is in a very good place to weather this. The sky is not falling. There are challenges, but here's a really interesting stat. Georgetown University recently released economic data on higher ed and basically said by 2025, the United States will need 20 million more college graduates to keep up with the workforce demands. So the sky's not falling. There are challenges, right? But the sky's not falling. But higher education, in my opinion, I was the product of this, is the very best avenue to a middle-class lifestyle, as well as to deal with the disruption of globalization. So, what would then our mission and vision? Again, I want to emphasize this our. What would it be? Well, first of all, it would be built on the foundation of some of the success. I'll talk a little more in detail about each of these in the next few minutes. But I would want, as president, to engage the community, the whole community, faculty, staff, students, board, administrators, families, community, church. Engage all of you to see, right? I really think you have this shared vision and mission and values, but I want to delve into that a little more, right? Get behind the scenes a little bit. Tie fiscal responsibility to the mission, right? We are long past the ability of higher ed to set budgets based on ad hoc lists from constituencies. That really has to be tied to the mission. But if everyone believes in the mission and vision and values, then we can all kind of go in the same direction. I understand that might sound a little Pollyannish, but I think it's absolutely crucial to move forward because there'll be needs for innovation and boldness, right? But it has to be a community decision in some ways. Focus intently on students and families. Talk more about that in a second. Prepare students for careers and students for life. So just a few details, but very few. So build on the foundation. I think, from what I can tell, you do really have a shared mission, vision, and values community, that you believe in this. You all agree on this. There may be little pockets of concern, but that's why I would like to then engage in conversation. But I think in general, from what I can sense, there's a shared idea here of who you are and where you're going. In addition to that, your location. I mean, you're in one of the fastest growing cities in the Midwest. It's young, it's diverse. You have a brand new soccer stadium across the road. This entire area is going to be redeveloped, it would seem to me, based on what I've seen in Portland when new stadiums go up. You just bought a building across the street. It's across the area, and so we're in another community. The ability to really start to reach out, I think, is amazing. The location here, tons of growth potential. Reputation and student achievement. You read your website. You guys probably don't read your websites a lot. I know we don't at Portland, right? Once you're inside, you don't read it. But if you read it from the outside, it's really amazing. The accolades you have. And I'll just highlight one, and that is the graduates from this school have the highest earning potential of any graduates from private schools in Minnesota. The federal government is going to start looking more and more at this, right? Graduation rates and earning potential. But you're very down that line. It's quite impressive. Fiscal discipline and sustainable financial model. I've talked about that already. That is a huge strength you have here. Affordability with the tuition reset. People are now able to access private education. And this provides the access. Affordability and access go hand in hand. And that creates a very diverse student population. And that's just a strength, right? And I'll talk briefly about that in a minute. So the next thing, what would I do if I were called to be the president here? Well, first of all, because there's no desperate situation, it would give a little breathing room for me to get to know you, you to get to know me. I would make it my intention the first year to visit every corner of the campus, every constituency of the campus, to try to figure out mission, vision, values. Do we have them in share? Are they shared? And more important would be my second question. What do I need to know to lead successfully? And what I mean by this is servant lead. I really embrace that, servant leadership. And so my goal would be to develop for myself a comprehensive understanding of the interconnection between the people, right, the programs, and the facilities that shape CSP. On ground, online, right, undergrad to grad. We've talked about this very briefly. I believe in conservative budgeting. I think that's the philosophy. I know that's the philosophy of the current leadership team. Right? I would rather end the year with money in the coffers than not. And we would all rather, because you don't want to be on the other side of that. Enough said, right? So conservative budgeting, it's just the way I run my life as well. Targeted, sustained growth. Your Vision 2024 plan to grow to 6,000 students, I think is completely achievable. Location, program offerings, you are on the path. But it's sustainable and it's targeted. It's not growth just to grow. Another thing I'd like to work with the board and the administration team on is monetizing assets. So for example, a new building, there'll be several floors at first before Vision 2024 is fully implemented. There'll be several floors that could be leased out or are in the process of being leased out. That is key. 88% of the revenue to CSP is tuition, fees, housing, food, right? Auxiliary services. We have to drive that number down. We have to have more diversified revenue streams so that in higher ed, as things go up and down, we have to have additional revenue coming in. So I don't have necessarily answers to this, but I do want to push in this direction because I think it's very wise and sustainable, and frankly, it's a conservative way of budgeting. Focus intently on students and their families. You probably already do this, but one of the hard things we've had to do at Portland is learn to pivot to recruiting families as much as students. Back to first gens for a second. Think about it from a first gen perspective. And now, unlike myself, parents come with their students, but they're first gen, so their parents never went to college. Maybe a community college classroom, but maybe only high school. So it's a family decision now. What are they buying? So families, if they're not engaged in the process, they don't even know what they're buying. They have in mind like maybe high school. So we finally have developed a parent track and a student track. And we do a mock teaching for the parents. So I would like to institute that here as well. The idea of giving them a taste of what it's like to be in a CSP classroom. I think this is very important for parents. Transfers. And again, these are some of the things, I just don't know the details yet. I can't get it from the website. But how do we deal with transfers? Do transfers have their own orientation? How are we plugging them into campus? Or do they kind of loosely sit on the periphery? Is it really a freshman to senior type undergraduate experience? Or do the transfers really get plugged in? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that's desperately needed and very important. Oh, earlier on the slide, you saw that 46% of students who come to college now have some community college credits already. So working with this transfer pool is super important to the future of CSP. Okay? As far as retention, building more affinity clubs is the key to retention. Getting students plugged in not just to academics, but into all kinds of other clubs, sports, honors, music. Am I going too far? Okay. Sorry, I like to wander. Music, drama. So if we can get them plugged into other things beyond academics is key, of course, but then they're more likely to stay. Also with parents. If we can convince parents that we're the right place for their son or daughter, right? If they know that they have placed a sacred trust in us, when the student makes the dump phone call, do you know about the dump phone call, about the 5th or 6th week, they make the call home, I can't take it anymore. If the parents know this is the right place and we're the right people to shape and form their son and daughter, the parent will say, I'm not coming to get you, call in a week, because that's the right place for you. Super important for retention. Hospitable, I've experienced it already. And I'm sure every student who comes here, prospective student, probably not only undergrad but grad, on ground and online, experience the same kind of hospitality, key to going forward. And engaging alumni. I'm sure you don't do this, right? But sometimes alumni are engaged only through the envelope, right? Give money. But I would like to engage alumni to bring, if they're local, to bring them to campus, meet students, travel with students on trips. I lead a lot of trips that combine students, congregational members, alumni, and donors to the university, and I put them together and I take them to Europe. I'd like to work on some of those trips, not for me, but faculty, right, staff, to work on connecting alumni back in. And one other thing, one little idea, Pints with Profs. Huge idea at Portland. It's been very successful. Bring in alumni from the Twin Cities area, get together with faculty and staff in a pub once a quarter, and just have a pint together. And then we can start to work on building those relationships which lead to donations. I'm almost out of time, so let me hit a few highlights. Academics. I, as a leader, understand, as a faculty member for 16 years, I understand faculty and the deans run the curriculum. But I want to be involved in this. Not telling you what to do, but I want to be involved in the conversation. And we need to push, right? Continue to add programs and reevaluate current programs. So one of the things in Vision 2024 is to add 2 undergraduate programs a year, 2 graduate programs a year. I'll just throw up a couple ideas. So I'd like to, and these are, of course, all negotiable. I'd want to work with the faculty and get a faculty champion and a dean champion. But how about something like a BS in civil engineering? Pushing into engineering would open up a whole new group of students. Engineering's expensive, but maybe start with construction management as a kind of toehold into civil engineering. How about MA in public health? A very popular degree now, especially for students who start out in nursing and they want a different plan. This one's more kind of interesting, right? Fermentation science, a joint degree between chemistry and business. Learning how to be a brewmaster, a distiller, a venter, but more importantly, the business acumen, learning how to run a brewery, run a distillery, run a winery. And think of the internship opportunities around town, right? Yes, I know. And the supervisors who supervise internships. What a boon. And then exploring some 3+2, 4+1 programs. So for example, I'd like to push on you guys to think about an international studies BA, move it from a minor to a major, and then combining it with MA in leadership and management, MA in strategic communication, your MBA program, or maybe even, yes, I'm even going to suggest this, a JD, because Concordia Portland has a law school, so we could train them here and then send them on to law school. So a lot of partnerships and collaboration. Expansion of undergraduate and graduate research, internships, and I already talked about alumni. So what do we do here, right? Same thing we do at CUP, we do at CSP, right? Holistic education of heart, mind, and soul. That's our niche, right? You can go to the University of Minnesota, but you don't get this, the heart, mind, and soul. It's pivotal, and it's very pivotal for moving forward in the future, and it's who we are. Vocations, helping students think not just about career, but all their vocations in life. I'm a dad to my children. That's one of my vocations. I'm a husband to my wife, another vocation, right? I'm currently the dean at Portland, another vocation, right? Getting students to think concretely about the gifts that God's given them and the vocations God's given them is rooted in our Lutheran confessions. Super important, and that's a distinctive that other schools don't have. Getting all students, not just undergrads in the general eds, right? But undergrads, grads, online, on ground, to ask these questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? And most importantly, whose am I? Gets to the faith matter. But we welcome all students from every walk of life. And we welcome them, right? Because we have the ability to, because it's affordable and accessible, we welcome all students from every path. But we also hope that whether they're Christian or not, when they get here, they get a sense of who we are because we do the bottom. We don't always do the love God, love neighbor thing perfectly. Obviously, we're sinful human beings. We tend to want to love ourselves first. But when we're at our best, we love God and love neighbor. And we hope that every student, whether they're on ground or online, in undergrad or grad or whatever major they're in, they're confronted, right, with the love of God through each of us. So I don't know, right? Have I hit the right balance? Enough specificity to give you an idea kind of how I think, what my leadership philosophy would be, but humble enough to know I don't know much about CSP. I know your website pretty well. I know your website quite well. Really well, actually. I'll let you know if there's typos, but no. So that's a little bit who I am. I'm really happy to be here. I'm thrilled, actually, to be here. Next day and a half, if you see me, stop me. Hopefully you get the sense I'm a pretty winsome kind of guy. So stop me, ask me questions. Those of you who are in sessions, I'll look forward to that. And I'm supposed to turn it over to Mark right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. Appreciate your words. Fantastic. So, okay, we have carved out a little bit of time for question and answer. And we've got a couple of microphones that we can roam around. So if you have a question, can you just raise your hand? And we want to put the microphone in front of you so that we can all be heard. So please, anybody have a question or a comment or a thought? I know he was very good in his presentation, however. Okay. Microphone is coming down here. By the way, this is being televised. It's being recorded.
My daughter's going to see that picture?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. This will be sent to your home so that you
I
can
hope
see what
I
he
get
said.
snowed in.
So if you have, if you if you do want to review, you can certainly go back and review because it is being recorded. So please.
Well, now the pressure's really on. Well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
And secondly, I'm sure you've seen by now, we're right in the middle of St. Paul's Midway neighborhood.
Yes.
Concordia has a long history of being directly involved with that neighborhood and that community. Oftentimes, the president has served as a bridge, a liaison between those things. What's a philosophy of yours that you would have coming into a new community fresh? So obviously you get to know Concordia, but steps you would take to get to know that community and our place in it and things like that. Just your vision in that realm.
Right. So I'm a little unclear. Midway is the community across the road, across the freeway?
It's kind of all around us. So
Okay.
the across the highway's not the barrier you'd think it is for that.
Okay. Well, one of the things I would do, and I'm going to start with campus and start moving out. One of the things I'd want to do, and I assume you're having this problem like we do at Portland. We're in a residential area as well. And one of the problems we have most with the neighborhood is parking. Right? They are not happy with our parking issues. And I'm guessing that's similar here. I don't know. But I'd want to engage in the neighborhood associations first. And then, so I'd first of all get involved in neighborhood associations, at least go and introduce myself and ask if they want to update or start a conversation. I'm sure Reverend Dr. Tom Reese has already done this. Many of the administrative team have done this. I'd want to continue that. I talk to them, of course, about what context they have. I don't want to rebuild bridges that are already there, right? But I also want to know the minefields and pitfalls, right? So that's what I would do. The other thing I would do is try to engage not only the Lutheran churches in the area, but the other Christian churches. I think it's really key that as Christianity is changing vis-a-vis secular culture, we need more allies, right? So I understand that's probably kind of too simplistic, but that's what I would try to do. And the Somali community, definitely would try to make inroads there. Yeah.
Okay, others? Raise your hand. Right back. Okay, yep.
One of my favorite parts of the promise statement is discover and engage your purpose for life, career, and service.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that's okay. One of my favorite parts of the promise statement is discover and engage your purpose for life, career, and service.
Yes.
I was wondering if you have any ideas for how to engage students in helping them find their purpose.
Internships, practica, engaging outside the community in service trips, and a deep examination. Frankly, one of the things I can't figure out on your website is exactly how the gen eds work here and kind of what's in the gen eds. Maybe if I went into I was not about to wade into the course catalog, right? I've been there right? I'm dean, of course, I know, course catalog, But I'd like to know, right, how are classes designed, undergrad, grad, on-ground, online, to get to those questions I asked earlier. Who am I? What's my purpose? Whose am I? And really get them to start to delve into vocational language. I think it's one of our huge strengths, and I think if we can get them to start to self-reflect on vocation and to get us to talk more freely about our vocations. I mean, my dozen vocations, Boy Scout leader, et cetera. I have multiple vocations. I think that gets the students thinking in that way. The society is so focused on career, right? But their careers are going to change dozens of times. But who are they deeply? And we need to give them enough experiences, right? Affinity groups also. Let me back up. One of the great things about a residential school is that students live here. We go home, they stay. And a lot of the learning takes place co-curricularly. And so how do we do co-curricular programming that also dovetails very closely with the academic questions that I've put forward? Because those are really academic, but they're also personal questions. Yeah, that would be kind of my answer. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Very good. Others? Over here, Jill?
Thank you. Concordia has a growing population of both Muslim students and LGBTQ students.
Yes.
Both very different populations, of course, but both have received differing levels of support across the country and on our campus.
Yep.
So can you speak to your experience with both populations and how you see that relationship with both populations moving forward here at Concordia?
Okay. My connection, let me talk about LGBTQ first, okay? So if you're very familiar with Portland, I won't get into the weeds here, but if you're familiar with issues in Portland, we've wrestled with this. As a member of the religion department, in fact, I was put on a task force just 2 days ago to try to wrestle with how do we create a statement that somehow tries to thread the needle between our Lutheran confessions and our need to be welcome and opening, not just our need, our want to be welcoming and opening and hospitable to all students. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but let me tell you a story, okay? So we have a gender resource sexuality center on campus. It was actually a response to our drag queen bingo thing that happened. If you don't know the story, you can look it up. But we had a situation that happened on campus, and frankly, it wasn't handled very well, in my opinion, by any of the sides, the student side, the club side, the faculty side, the administrative side. But, you know, the thing is here, we're all just kind of wading into this, right? There's no roadmap here. There's no answers to this stuff. So the answer, I don't know, is a really helpful answer to start with that humility. But we have this new center, and they started putting on trainings, just trying to get people aware of the issues. And, you know, to me, I'm new to some of these issues, right? And I'm pretty ignorant about some of the issues. And there were a lot of terms being thrown away around that I just didn't know the answer to, like cisgender and non-binary. So I just said, my good friend of mine runs this, and so I thought, she's a former student, honor student actually. And she's now the resource center director. And so she asked me to come, and I said, absolutely, I'll come. And it was, and the reason I'm telling the story is because of what happened during the event. So not only was I learning a lot of things intellectually, academically, definitions, but they had a trans student there from Japan. And the trans student grew up in Japan, born a female, expresses as a male, and in Japan was never accepted by, which pronoun, his or her? His family, never accepted by his family. Came to Portland, went to Portland State, and was downtown and was beaten up severely in a men's bathroom. And I never understood the issue with bathrooms. I always thought it was kind of PC stuff. But that day, listening to that student who then went on to say that he would not eat or drink when he was on the college campus for fear of being assaulted again. So then that day I understood why we had a couple bathrooms on campus for that purpose. So that day, right, I was humbled a lot because I thought I knew the answer to this, and I was shown that I didn't know the answer. So I think that's a good way to start, right? Humility, just saying, I just don't know, right? And I'm open to learning. We are called to be little Christ, to welcome people, whether those of us who are Christian on campus, we're called to be welcoming. Jesus never let an issue like that get in the way of talking to the person. Maybe they didn't agree with the lifestyle, right? Samaritan woman, for example, didn't agree, sin no more, right? This kind of thing. But Jesus never let those issues get in the way of building the relationship. And I think for me, and you probably will get the sense of me over the next day and a half, for me, it's about building relationships. So you build relationships, then you can have difficult conversations. You build relationships, you can start asking really deep questions that get at the heart of this issue. So for me, LGBTQ, I still am struggling. Is it a lifestyle? Is it identity? I don't know. And I'm trying to engage people who can tell me what their experiences are. Same thing with Muslim students. I don't have as much experience with Muslim students except for at UVA. I had a few friends, Muslim friends at UVA. I have many, many more connections with the Jewish community because of my field. And we don't have many Muslim students at Concordia either. But again, it's the same kind of thing. I'd say we start where we agree, right? Abrahamic religions, agree on love God and love neighbor, and let's start there, and let's start some conversations. So probably a little long-winded, but a long way to say, I don't know. Yeah, so.
Very good, thank you. Any others? Just have a couple more minutes. Anybody else? Okay, very good. Just a couple more ending things. From a process perspective, in addition to running Dr. Thomas around the place here for the next day and a half, you'll see him all over the place. Your board will be meeting in May, early May, right around commencement time, to kind of work through next steps and next process, knowing full well that Dr. Reese will be retiring at the end of June. So hopefully by May, we'll be able to make some decisions as to where we're heading. It'll all be in the right direction and committed to this institution. And then the other thing is there's a huge amount of logistics and work that it takes when all the interviewing and the meetings that have taken place and the day and a half that's happening here. And you have two people on campus that are just absolutely phenomenal in helping out with this process, and that is Dr. Eric Lamont and Jill Simon. So I want to just publicly thank them and give them a hand for a huge amount of work. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming. You know that Dr. Thomas will be running around the campus, so if you have something you want to chat with him about, feel free to do so. And thank you for your comments, and welcome again.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.